All right, everybody, welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we are going to be predicting and deep diving into the NFC North. We're going to be giving our opinions and thoughts on each NFC North team. We're going to be talking about their offseason additions and subtractions, talking about their starting lineups, and giving our predictions for the end of the year. So, we're going to be giving our award winner predictions for the division, and it's going to be a really fun one. How are you, Josh?
Doing good. There's one particular team who's a favorite of mine, and I'm excited to talk about them. But yeah, we're gonna get into this. It's gonna be a new little series we start doing. We'll do every NFC division and then move on to the AFC division. So it'll be something to stay tuned for if we start talking about your favorite team. Stay tuned.
Yep, we're going to do one a week for the next 8 weeks. So definitely stay tuned for your team. And I guess we'll just get right into the 2022 recap. And that starts with the 13-4 Vikings, who placed first in the division. Some would say they were lucky. They had some weird fourth quarter voodoo going on all year. They were immaculately lucky coming away with one possession wins all year long. It was pretty crazy. The Lions went 9-8. They ended the playoffs hope of the playoff hopes of the 8-9 Packers, who finished third, and then the Bears finished 3-14 and earned the first overall pick. So, pretty rough division. It's an interesting one. What were your thoughts of the NFC North last year?
They're a weird division, but there's definitely some potential and some upside in this division. I mean, the Lions, they're kind of coming up and they're hot right now. They got some fun additions, but it is a weird. The Vikings, the fluke of every 1 point game or one possession game that they won was crazy. The Bears were pretty awful. Packers now, we're going to be under a new quarterback, so they're interesting. I mean, it's an exciting division, and there's a lot of uncertainty, going forward.
Yep, very exciting. And speaking of exciting, let's just get right into the first team we'll talk about since they finished last in the division, and that is the Chicago Bears, which, if one word described this team, is exciting. And they had a rough 2022, but 2023 will be a very fun season and exciting season. And they're both very polarizing team. And I mean, how could you not be positive when talking about the Bears' future and just what Ryan Poles is building there? It's a really fun culture he's establishing. And I love what he's building on the offensive line, and I love what he did this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, just to start it off, they had the number one overall pick, and then trading down and acquiring DJ Moore was absolutely awesome. I mean, that was one of the coolest things, and then getting multiple first round picks out of it too. So I mean, it was a super great move. Ryan Poles, he's on the come up. I think the Bears are in for a significant improvement
You
this year.
also got my guy in the draft and Darnell Wright, so he had a
Yes,
pretty
Darnell Wright. The
big
first
first
they
round.
traded they not only did they traded down twice. So I mean they traded down and got Darnell Wright, who is my guy, who's just the perfect addition to a guy like Justin Fields. So that's one of the most exciting things to me is adding a plug and play tackle, a guy who's a mauler, in the run game and just pretty flawless in pass protection. So that's going to be a huge improvement for the Bears offensive line, adding Darnell Wright.
Yeah, and that's a good transition into their offseason. Some other notable additions that the Bears added on offense were Deontay Foreman. They added him and Johnson to the running back room with Khalil Herbert. So that's going to be a really fun and interesting running back room. And then they also added Rob Tonyan to be the complement to Cole Kmet. I don't know if he'll start or who will really start, but I think they'll both just kind of complement each other well. And then they added a starting guard in Nate Davis, which is pretty big. And then they added two really good starting linebackers, Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, who both just completely broke out last year. And it's interesting because Jack Sanborn on this team also broke out. So they've got three great linebackers now.
Yeah, no, they had a fantastic. I mean, free agency was awesome, and they spent big on their linebacker position. They got a a defensive minded head coach, Eberflus, who came over from the Colts. Who wants to have that that Bears defense. The famous Bears defense. So that'll be exciting, and they're going to be a ground and pound team. I mean, they clearly look what they added. Khalil Herbert's a pretty strong run through the tackles running back, but they added Deontay Foreman and Roshan Johnson. So that kind of just tells you what they want to do on offense. And then getting a mauler again like Darnell Wright. I mean, so they're going to be an exciting run team. They kind of remind me almost of like the Browns, to be honest with you. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
when you
like
mix in Justin Fields' legendary running ability, they are going to be a very exciting and polarizing run game. That's going to be really hard to game plan against too.
100%. Yeah. And they're on, I mean, you know, they were obviously the worst team last year, but they're on the rise. And, you know, I mean, their GM did a fantastic job. I mean, I can't compliment them enough for that DJ Moore trade, you know, not only getting a centerpiece for your offense, who's a young, you know, playmaking receiver who can be a franchise guy for you, but also adding, what was it, 2 or 3 first round picks for that pick. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they cashed out and they did a good job.
Yeah, fantastic job. I'm loving what Ryan Poles is building, and their notable losses are really a thin list. It's just David Montgomery, pretty much, and like we said, they added some great running backs, so that's not really a loss. And the only other name I could think of was Riley Reef, and that's not a loss when you think about Darnell Wright coming in. Larry Borum was good too, so they didn't really have many notable losses at all. And with that, we can kind of just get into the roster.
Yes, sir.
All right, you want to talk about the offense and what you think about that receiving core with Justin Fields?
You know what? It is, you know, it's a sneaky good receiving core. I mean, we didn't even talk about during, you know, last year they traded for Chase Claypool. Maybe gave up a little bit too much for him. They got Darnell Mooney, who's a young ascending talent, and then not to mention they got the speedster from Cincinnati, Tyler Scott, in the 4th round. And then, you know, adding DJ Moore in the mix of that, I mean, they're absolutely stacked at receiver. There's no reason Justin Field shouldn't have open guys down the field. So I mean, that really excites me. How do you feel about the receiver core?
You just named 4 receivers that all have completely different skill sets that complement each other perfectly. And that's exactly what I look for in my favorite receiving core. So I absolutely love it. I love what the Bears are building again on that offense. And I think it's going to really help Justin Fields take a step up as a passer this year. And I really do think he will be pretty improved this year as a passer. And talking about the run game with Khalil Herbert, Deontay Foreman, and Roshan Johnson, no one really knows who's going to start, but I don't really care who it is because all 3 are great running backs and they can just complement each other and just do a running back by committee with Justin Fields' electric running back ability or running ability. It's exciting.
Yeah. And then to move on to their offensive line, you know, at left tackle, they got Braxton Jones, left guard, Tevin Jenkins, former, you know, was he a 2nd round pick or a 1st round? Oh, he fell into the
Early
second.
second.
Yeah, and then Cody Whitehair, Nate Davis, and then Darnell Wright at right tackle. So honestly, a much improved, really good offensive line. I mean, adding Darnell Wright to that line really does solidify it. But really, I mean, Alex Leatherwood is depth too. So I mean, a pretty impressive offensive line as well.
Yeah, outside of Larry Borum, the depth does scare me. But that starting 5, if they can stay healthy, they have the 5. And Ryan Poles, as a former offensive lineman, knows what he's doing. He knows what he's building, and he looks for athleticism in these guys. And I'm so excited. Just one offensive lineman I do want to talk about real quick is Braxton Jones, a left tackle. Just going back and watching the Bears to prepare for this, it was I knew he was good last year, but as a 5th round pick out of Southern Utah, I didn't think that Braxton Jones could possibly be like a top 15 left tackle in the NFL as a rookie. It's a really hard thing to do coming from a small school like that, and he was so good. And I'm really excited to see what he can do as their starter in the future, and I'm really happy they kept him as a starter.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then moving into tight end, Cole Kmet. He's definitely, you know, a younger talent. He's still, you know, waiting to hit his stride, but there's no reason Cole Kmet can't be pretty good. And then, you know, Justin Fields is Justin Fields. He's definitely growing into his own, and I'm excited to see him going forward.
Yep, and then adding Rob Tanyan's fun too. And then we'll go into the defense, which is another intriguing group. Like you said, Eberflus is a great coach. He'll coach up this defense great. And I like what they did with the secondary, adding Tyreek Stevenson. It allows them to put Kyler Gordon into the slot, play Jalen Johnson on the outside, be the lockdown corner. And there's 3 complementary corners that are your 3 starting corners for the future. And I really like that trio if they stay healthy. I think that's big. The front 7's a question mark. I really wish they would have spent more money in free agency. There's not really any names to mention when DeMarcus Walker is your best pass rusher. But I mean, obviously, like we mentioned at the top of the show, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds coming in is massive. Tremaine Edmonds really was so good last year, and he had a really big breakout for the Bills, and no one really talks about it. And he's still so young, and So I'm really excited to see what this Bears defense will do. And I mean, like I said, Jack Sanborn was great too. So
Yeah, they're definitely a younger team. Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, those are fun. Adding on top of that, Jalen Johnson, who's just a fantastic corner, and then Eddie
and
Jackson and
yeah,
Jaquan Brisker at
Brisker and
safety.
Jackson is so fun.
That's fantastic. Brisker and Jackson are a fantastic duo who I'm really high on. They spent huge, obviously, in free agency on their linebackers who look really good. And then yeah, their defensive line is and edge is questionable, very, very questionable. But they did add Jervon Dexter from Florida, and then Zach Pickens, who should definitely help out. And then Justin Jones is just pretty much a role player, but he's a starter. But other than that, they're on the rise. That defensive line definitely does need work, especially at edge. It's looking pretty bad. But other than that, I do really like the defense.
Yeah, Gervin Dexter is a fun addition. I really do think he will kind of develop into a star D lineman for them. I just don't know how soon that'll happen. But with that, let's get into the Packers, the second team in this division. And I mean, they were pretty interesting last year. What were your thoughts on the Packers last year?
Roller coaster. They're just like an emotional roller coaster. It felt like that's kind of what Aaron Rodgers has been this last season, and it's just been an emotional roller coaster for the Packers, with their coaching staff and everything too. But and then the wide receiver problem too is gone on for a while too. They just can't seem to want to spend big in the draft or anything on wide receiver. But I think they did have a pretty good offseason, and there's some notable, ads that we definitely need to talk about. But they were a roller coaster team last year, and I do expect a bounce back, all depending on Jordan Love.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it all depends on Jordan Love. And we both loved him coming out of Utah State. He's a really toolsy quarterback. He's accurate, poised. I'm really excited to see what he can do in the offense, and we'll simply just have to see. And when getting into the roster and the offseason of this team, it's just important to start with talking about the departures. So we're going to talk about the losses first, and that starts with Aaron Rodgers, legendary Hall of Fame quarterback. Obviously, that's unfortunate, but it was probably time, and it's probably for the best. They also lost Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, and Adrian Amos all to the Jets. So that's pretty funny. The Jets just took the Packers team, but
Yeah.
those were all their notable losses, all to the Jets.
Yep. Which is pretty funny. But I mean, other than Aaron Rodgers and Amos on defense, it doesn't feel like too big of a loss.
And like I said, they had a pretty interesting offseason. Their biggest additions were really just extending Aaron Jones and Jordan Love. That's really all they did. So there's some question marks for the Packers this offseason, but I mean, they're I don't know what their expectations will be, but they're going to be a decent team.
Yeah, I think their expectations definitely not Super Bowl, but definitely in the mix for a wild card, playoff spot is what they're hoping for.
All right. And then we'll get into the roster, and we'll start with the offense. And I mean, Jordan Love throwing to Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and Jaden Reed. That sounds like a pretty nice receiving trio. And I've been hearing that in training camp, Romeo Dobbs has been Jordan Love's favorite guy. So that's a pretty interesting report. I don't know how the fantasy owners are going to like that one, but I like Romeo Dobbs, and he's a really good all-around overall receiver. But I love Christian Watson. I think him and Jordan Love will have a really fun connection. He can take anything to the house on any given play. And you love Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon.
Yeah, no, and to talk about the receiver core, very young and unproven. Obviously, Jaden Reed was their second round pick this year, who I was actually pretty high on. I really like him. I think he could be a fantastic slot receiver. He's going to immediately start for them day one, which is kind of interesting. And then fourth round pick Romeo Dobbs, and then Christian Watson, who's kind of it seems like the veteran of that wide receiver right now, and he's just going into his second year, which is funny. But I think there's a lot of upside to talk about right there, and they definitely could be very good, but still very young and unproven. And then I'm a big Aaron Jones fan, and I think the Aaron Jones AJ Dillon is one of the better running back duos in the NFL. Don't love it for fantasy reasons. Definitely makes me mad every year I have Aaron Jones, and then seeing his touchdowns get slashed by AJ Dillon.
Oh yeah.
But very, very, very good core. And then to talk about is they made me mad in the draft when they took Luke Musgrave and then the next round took Tucker Kraft. That is absolutely awesome for them. I think it's so cool, but it made me so mad because I was wanting one of those two tight ends for my Chargers, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, they're both gone. Who took them? Oh, the Packers took them. They went crazy on tight end, and I mean Luke Musgrave is like a really fast wide receiver who can block, okay. And then Tucker Kraft is just like a solid Hunter Henry to me. So I absolutely love that tight end room. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, how can you not love drafting both of them? They were both really good prospects and they complement each other so well. And Musgrave is a really fun player. I mean, honestly, Kraft is too. I'm really excited to see how they do with Love. Both of them can be really good.
Yeah, having those two on the field at the same time is going to be awesome. So that's pretty good. And then quarterback Jordan Love, yeah, we were both super high on him coming out of college, Utah State. Very very toolsy as you said, Dan, and then super accurate at Utah State. He was amazing. If you go back and watch his tape, just an awesome quarterback to watch. And then he put Utah State on the map, which is pretty cool. And we've waited a long time to watch him, and we're definitely rooting for him and think he can definitely do very well.
Yeah, one of my worst draft takes was having him over Justin Herbert, but we won't talk about that. We'll get into the offensive line, and they have David Bakhtiari back, which is always a question mark with how long he'll actually play. I'm sure Jenkins will play a lot of left tackle, and Zach Tom will move over too. And Zach Tom starting at right tackle will be interesting. We liked him last year coming out of the draft, so I guess we'll have to see on that. And then Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, and John Runyon and the inside is pretty decent. It's not as good as an offensive line as they've had in years past, but it's still going to be really solid.
Yeah, yeah, it's nothing to write home about, that's for sure. But it can definitely be solid offensive line. I would say definitely falls probably within the bottom 15 rank of the league. But overall, it's not horrible. Definitely can build on it over the coming years.
Yeah, I won't hold you back or anything.
Nope.
With that, we'll get into the defense, and their defense is pretty exciting when you think about it. They're secondary with Jair Alexander and what's his name, Rashawn Gary, two just
Yes.
complete superstars. I didn't love Quay Walker coming out last year. Didn't love taking him that high in the first round, but he was all right. And they got Kenny Clark, who's just an absolute beast. Devontae Wyatt, they didn't really play much. Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary are a pretty good edge rush duo. I think Rashawn Gary will have a pretty good breakout season if he stays healthy, and he'll be in the hunt for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah. You know who a name that I totally forgot about is Eric Stokes.
Yeah,
That's a
that's the name that I was trying to think of. I couldn't find his name.
Yeah, Eric Stokes. That's kind of a forgotten name to me, but I don't know why. But yeah, no, they actually they've done a really good job, of building a very solid defense over the last couple of years, and that's kind of what they prioritized. It seems like every year they've been going defense in the first round. Obviously, Lucas Van Ness this year, last year Quay Walker, which was definitely a surprise to everyone. Didn't even feel like he was the best, linebacker from Georgia that year. But they've been building on it, and yeah, Kenny Clark is an absolute beast. Rashawn Gary is an absolute beast. I even like Darnell. I mean, Darnell Savage is nothing, nothing special, but he's a solid role player. Rasul Douglas, he's kind of an underrated cornerback as well, who I actually really like. A couple of years ago, I was one of my Chargers this time because he had a very underrated season. But yeah, I really do like the Packers defense. I think it's pretty good.
Definitely has potential. Losing Adrian Amos might take a little bit of a hit.
Yeah.
But... All right, with that, then we'll get into the Detroit Lions, who are honestly the most hyped up team in the NFL going into the season. And I'm just so excited to talk about this Lions team. And I know you love them.
Oh man, they're exciting. They are a team that is on the up and rising. I mean, I have them, going far this year, and I think they're going to shock, and I think they have a really good chance to win this division. I think they're going to shock a lot of teams. I mean, they barely missed out on the playoffs last year, but oh man, they got something special going there in Detroit, and we'll go over their roster, and I think by the time we're done talking about it, we're both going to be even higher on them.
Yep, so exciting. And let's get into their additions for the offseason. And they added David Montgomery, which is really interesting when you think about them adding David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs and getting rid of DeAndre Swift. interesting dynamic, but I mean, it's a pretty dynamic running back duo.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like they flipped their running back. That was the one thing that was interesting to me. They had a pretty good running back duo with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, and then they just like flipped it, and it's whatever, it works. I'm excited to see this running back duo. I'm excited to see Jameer Gibbs. I think he definitely will be an upgrade over what they had for sure.
Yeah. And then they lost or actually they actually added Marvin Jones as well, which is worth mention because it's a reunion, so it's always fun. And they got Jameson Williams suspended for 6 weeks, so
Yeah,
that's pretty big.
yeah, yeah. No,
And
I'm
then
bummed about Jamison Williams. I was hoping to hopefully see more of him this year.
yeah, but 6 weeks isn't too bad. Like he'll be back for the playoff push. He'll be back, and I'm not too worried about Jameson Williams. I think he'll actually have a pretty good season. So then they also added Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Cameron Sutton, and Emmanuel Mosley all to their secondary, which is pretty huge. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was one of the more underrated signings of all free agency. He was signed for literally nothing. Just a complete steal. Definitely the biggest bargain of free agency to me. And we'll talk more about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson later.
Oh man, but yeah, let's go over their offensive starters really quick. I mean, at receiver, Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, obviously, sadly Jameson Williams is out. Amon-Ra St. Brown, absolute stud, one of the up and coming best receivers in the NFL. I think. I think over the next couple of years, he'll probably establish himself as a top 10 receiver. And then their offensive line is actually really freaking good. It's almost flawless, to be honest with you. Going from Taylor Decker at left tackle all the way to Penei Sewell at right tackle, Frank Ragnow in the middle, Jonah Jackson. I mean, it's very solid. And then not even to mention the drafting of Sam Laporta, who I just think is just going to fit that Dan Campbell kind of scheme just flawlessly. And I'm so excited to see him in that offense. I think he's a very underrated player and is a sleeper for this year for fantasy too.
Yeah, their offensive line is literally perfect, and they bring in Graham Glasgow for another reunion for more depth, and their offensive line is going to be one of the best in the NFL. And I like Sam Laporta a lot too. I think he can be one of the top tight ends in the NFL. The way he moves is pretty special. He's really fun after the catch, and I really like the fit. He's such a Dan Campbell guy, like you said, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in Detroit. And Jared Goff was great last year. Excited to see what this offense can do this year. They were the fourth best offense last year.
Yeah, I mean, and they're just gonna get better. I mean, Ben Johnson, I'm so high. He's one of my favorite offensive coordinators in the entire league. He opted to not go take a head coaching job when he easily could have had one, to go, see this through in Detroit. And it's their offense is going to be electric. I think it's for sure going to be top five again. I think they're going to have some really high, value fantasy players, from Jameer Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta as a sleeper. It's going to be a very exciting offense, and it has great depth too.
Yep. And then moving on to the defense, there is a little bit more question marks. But they did add to it, like we said, with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Cameron Sutton, especially making the secondary a lot better. It was a problem last year. And we didn't even mention Brian Branch, who will be, if not a starting slot day one, he'll just be a good nickel dime sub package player that can play all over the defense. And we both loved him coming out. And Jack Campbell is just going to be a cornerstone piece for this defense. That's going to be awesome getting in there with Alex Anzalone and Malcolm Rodriguez. And I love that linebacking core. And it's a really fun outlook for the Lions' future.
Yeah, I did forget, who did they lose to the Falcons? Their third Okudah, Jeff
Okudah.
Okudah. Yes, they did lose Jeff Okudah, who really wasn't anything special. I mean, I do think he'll improve with Atlanta. But yeah, their secondary was their weak spot last year, and I thought, the additions of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Cam Sutton were absolutely fantastic. And then they absolutely got a steal with Brian Branch in the second round. There's no reason Brian Branch should have still been there that late. It was just ridiculous. That's going to be such a huge addition, such a flawless tackler. I mean, he's just what you want at the defensive back position, and he's kind of a let's see, what do you call that, a Swiss Army knife. He kind of does everything back there, and that's so underrated. And that defense is going to really really improve with those guys, and then Jack Campbell in the middle, to kind of be your green dot, possibly, the guy that kind of, communicates with both sides. He's going to be fun. He's kind of an all around player, you know, that hard nose hitting, you know, run stopper, but can also be, you know, underrated, you know, in the passing game. And he's going to be very exciting for that defense. And I think he's got a chance to be something super special, you know.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention Aiden Hutchinson, who had a great rookie
Oh yeah.
season. Second overall pick for them last year. He had a great rookie season, and I'm expecting big things from him this year. And I think he'll take an even bigger step up.
Oh yeah. He'll probably end up being a top 8 edge rusher, I think, by the end of the season. He was such a stud last year, and Lions sure have improved, and they're a fun team. You know, watch out for the Lions because you know this their playoff drought might end this next season. They might even go further than that.
Yeah, definitely. And with that, we'll get into the Minnesota Vikings. And they had an interesting off season. Their two biggest additions were Marcus Davenport and Byron Murphy, both defensive pieces. They both fit Brian Flores' scheme, who was also an addition, perfectly. And I'm excited to see what they can do in his defense. I think the Vikings will be much improved this year, actually, because Brian Flores, I think he's just a big improvement to Ed Donatel last year, and their defense will be a lot better. And even though their record might not be as good, because they're not going to have some fourth quarter voodoo going on this year, they're still going to be a better team, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. I think you'll see a lot more consistency out of the Vikings on both sides of the ball. I mean, they were very up and down, especially on defense. I mean, it was kind of a disaster sometimes where they're allowing 30 plus point games consistently. And like you said, you know, getting rid of Donatel, I think was a huge step in the right direction for the Vikings. Um, but they're exciting. They're still, you know, a younger, exciting team who's got a lot of upside to go, you know. Dalvin Cook is gone from them, which it was just an interesting loss, you know. But I think Alexander Madison's like the same player at this point, if not better. So it doesn't feel like they had too big of losses. Adam Thielen, you know, leaving was kind of sad for Vikings fans, but at this point, you know, he's not that great. He's kind of washed and kind of getting old. I do think he'll improve and he'll help in Carolina, but you know, Jordan Addison is your wide receiver too is actually a huge upgrade, and he complements Justin Jefferson so well. So that wide receiver core, I think, is going to take another step forward this year, and I'm super excited to see it.
Yeah, I think that Addison and for Thielen's definitely an upgrade. It's so exciting, and we'll just get into their offense right now. I think Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, and Jordan Addison are a perfect three, and Kirk Cousins is going to love that trio because he loves all three of those receivers. He loves those types of receivers that can kind of do it all in the intermediate game, and I'm really excited to see what they all can do, especially Jordan Addison. I think he's going to have a great rookie season. I'm so
Mhm.
excited for that, and their offensive line is great when you think about them having probably the most underrated left tackle in the NFL, Christian Darrisaw. Just so good last year, should have been an all-pro. And they got Brian O'Neill, who's also a top 5 right tackle in the NFL. It's pretty sick tackle duo. And then their interiors all right. They got Cleveland, Bradbury, and Ingram. But I like their offense a lot when you think about TJ Hawkinson and Alexander Madison. They've got a really stacked offense.
That was a great trade for the Vikings last year too. TJ Hawkinson really came in there and you know it stepped up that tight end room a lot. And it was a great weapon for Kirk Cousins. That was one of the, you know, the untalked about, you know, underrated moves of the offseason, and they definitely won with that trade. But yeah, I mean that offensive line, like you said, very underrated and just pretty solid throughout. I mean, no really weak spot on that entire offensive line. So I mean, one of the better, definitely top 15 offensive line in my opinion, you know, with top 10 potential. But very solid team, and yeah, it's just I think the Vikings can go as far as Kirk Cousins can take them.
And then when you take a look into the Vikings defense, it's an interesting defense. I obviously love Brian Flores coming in. I think it's a big upgrade. Like I said earlier, Daniil Hunter and Marcus Davenport's an interesting edge duo. I do love Marcus Davenport coming in. I just kind of hate losing Zadarius Smith to the Browns. That sucks for nothing. But I don't love their linebacking core with losing Eric Kendricks. Brian Asamoah starting. He's a really unproven player coming out into the league, and I guess we're just gonna have to see with him. I didn't really see it with him, to be honest. And Mekhi Blackman is kind of another player I feel the same way about. I didn't really see it with him. I don't know if he's ready to start right now, and it's looking like he might because they released Cameron Dantzler for no reason, who was pretty good. So I don't know exactly what the Vikings front office is doing, but their defense could be decent.
Yeah, I think like you said, their biggest addition was their head, or getting their defensive coach.
Mhm.
So that was the most notable addition. Other than that, they had a lot of losses. So, I do think Brian Flores will actually help the play of the team, but they lost a lot of talent, and losing Zadarius Smith and Eric Kendricks, and then just letting Cameron Dancer go for no reason. It was weird. It was very strange. So I think the players got worse, but I do like the coaching. I do think it'll be a better call defense. So I do think they could play better. But it's kind of just iffy for me right now. I'm kind of feeling weird about it.
Yeah. Interesting outlook for the Vikings. We're gonna talk about our predictions going into the season now. So I guess you'll see our thoughts on who will win the division. But let's hear your prediction for offensive player of the year slash MVP. But it's kind of an obvious one because we both have the same one, and it should be the same for everyone in the world.
Obviously, it's going to be Justin Jefferson. There's just, no better player. He's one of the better players in the whole NFL. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. And so, you can't really argue it. It's too obvious of a pick here.
Yeah, and it's Justin Jefferson. He's the MVP of the NFC North. There's no one even close, and we're gonna put a slash Justin Fields because he's the only guy that has the potential to even somewhat overtake him. He won't, but he's the only guy that we could mention for offensive player of the year because Justin Jefferson's that guy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, he is. But yeah, Justin Fields is a close second. He's a pretty electric quarterback. He's going to make some crazy runs, some crazy throws. But there's no one better than Justin Jefferson in that division. He's the MVP for sure.
All right, let's hear your pick for defensive player of the year then.
I'm gonna throw you for a loop here for defensive player of the year. I'm gonna go Lions new addition Chauncey Gardner Johnson.
Oh,
Chauncey Gardner Johnson led the whole NFL in interceptions last year, and there's going to be plenty of interceptions to go around with with that Lions defense. I think they're gonna force a lot of turnovers. I think Chauncey Gardner Johnson knows how to be in the right place at the right time, and I think we're gonna see another 5+ pick season from Chauncey Gardner Johnson. I'm super excited to see him on the Lions.
yeah, that's really fun. He only signed a 1 year contract, so he's going to go out there and
Oh,
I know
ball.
for a fact he's going to get paid next offseason. Let's just say that.
Hmm.
I'm going to go with Aiden Hutchinson, another Lion for my defensive player of the year. And a lot of the Lions hype train goes into that decision, honestly. The Lions are going to have a lot of eyes on them this year, and they're going to be a really good team. And Aiden Hutchinson was a really good player last year. He honestly was better than I expected. He's just a really solid player. I think he has like Bosa potential one day. I really think he has that upside, and I didn't see it in him initially, but he's a really good football player, and I love him.
Yeah, he's sure grown into his own, and he's only getting better. I mean, last year was a very impressive season from Aiden Hutchinson, and I think he'll take that next step this year. So that was a great pick.
All right, let's hear your offensive rookie of the year.
So my offensive rookie of the year is going to be another Lions player, and that's going to be Jameer Gibbs. They drafted him extremely high, 12th overall. No one saw it coming, but in a creative offense with Ben Johnson, he's going to have to figure out a way to get Jameer Gibbs the ball and get Jameer Gibbs the ball often. So I mean, he's gonna get a lot of touches. I think he'll score a lot of touchdowns, and I think he's going to have a fantastic rookie season.
Yeah, you definitely can't argue with that. Going into the DeAndre Swift role, that's awesome. He's gonna do great. He's gonna be so fun for fantasy. He's gonna have a lot of people watching him, a lot of hype. So definitely possible he wins offensive rookie of the year, honestly. Um, I'm going to go with a little bit different route. I'm going to go Jordan Addison. I've been talking him up all offseason. I was really high on him in the draft. I love the guy. I love the fit in Minnesota. I think Kirk will love him. I think they'll have a great connection. And Justin Jefferson complements him perfectly. So I'm really excited for the Vikings offense. And I think Jordan Addison could be like a league winner in fantasy football and a fan favorite. And I think that could lead to him being a rookie of the year.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Jordan Addison just compliments Justin Jefferson so perfectly. And he's just going to be on the receiving winning end of Justin Jefferson getting triple teamed. So, there's going to be a lot of targets and a lot of, one-on-one opportunity for Jordan Addison. And that, could definitely lead to a rookie of the year scenario for him.
Let's hear your defensive rookie of the year.
All right. So my defensive rookie of the year, another Lions player, Mr. Jack Campbell. And I think he's
Has
just
to be.
yeah, he has to be. He's just coming into a role where he's gonna, get so many tackles, be all around the ball, and he's just gonna be one of the most involved players. And he's just I think you could see possibly 2 interceptions, 4+ sacks, 100+ tackles from the guy. I think the sky's the limit, and he's just too obvious of a defensive rookie of the year pick for me. So very very high on the Lions and the Lions draft and everything this year.
Yep, I'm gonna put Jack Campbell down for me as well. I think he's gonna be a perennial starter for that defense, a green dot player, if you will, just a leader for that defense for the next decade. So real excited for Jack Campbell. And let's get into the finale, the division winner. Who are you predicting to be the NFC North division winner in 2023?
Couldn't guess by all my players. I'm gonna guess the Lions are gonna be the division winner for 2023. I just feel like out of all these teams, they're the ones who improve the most. They have the most upside. They're just really growing into a great team. I love the coaching staff. I love I'll praise Ben Johnson, for making that offense last year top five. I think he's gonna do it again. And that defense just really solidified its weaknesses in the secondary, adding some star studs, who are younger, who are just really gonna, help that defense flourish. And it's too obvious of a pick for me. I think the Lions are gonna take over, and I'm excited for it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really close. I love it, and I'm gonna go the Lions as well, man. I'm getting good vibes from that team. I love the coaching. I love the culture that Dan Campbell has in place there, and I think they showed a big step last year. And I think this is the year that they win the division, make the playoffs. I think they can get 10, 11 wins. I have a 12-win ceiling for them, and they have an incredibly hard schedule. So that would be the one thing holding them back. And the Vikings definitely could win this division. It was a coin flip, honestly, to be honest. But the Lions are just going to be so fun. The Packers, honestly, are probably going to be a pretty solid team as well. And the Bears have tremendous upside. So don't count any of these teams out, really. But we both are buying into the Lions hype this year for sure, it seems like.
I'm all on board the Lions hype train. I can't get off of it now. I've been too high on them. But yeah, no, don't be shocked if the Vikings are a 12+ win team, or the Bears come out of nowhere, or the Packers, Jordan Love, is the next great thing. So there's so much upside for this division. But right now I'm riding the Lions hype train. I'm not slowing down.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great way to end it. So much upside in this division, so much fun things, and a fun future for all the fans. So if you guys are still listening, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe to the NFL Seekers podcast on all platforms, and we're gonna get every division. So stay tuned.
Yes, sir. Follow us on TikTok too. New
All right.
platform for us.
Yes, sir. All right. Have a good one. Peace, guys.